Hello everyone, my name is Joseph Elfelt and I'm the developer of GISsurfer. This video will show you how to identify GIS data that supports dynamic layers and then how to use that feature to change how the data looks on the map. This is one of the most powerful features of GISsurfer and something that I use all the time. Now there's bad news and good news. The bad news is that the syntax I will show you in this video looks complicated and scary. The good news is that if you can copy and paste, then you can use dynamic layers, and I will show you how. In addition to this video, I also produced a PDF file that documents working with dynamic layers. You can copy the syntax from that PDF file and tweak it to meet your needs. Working that way, by copying and pasting, is easy, quick, and effective. It's also the way I work myself. To find that PDF file, visit the GISsurfer homepage, GISsurfer.com, click the big green menu button, and go to the Help page. The map on the screen displays trail data that is hosted on an ArcGIS server operated by the U.S. Forest Service. This area is close to Seattle, and I've hiked in this area many times. On this base map, the narrow black line depicting the trails is easy to see. But notice what happens when I change to an aerial view. A lot of the aerial is fairly dark and it makes the trails much harder to see. Well, we can use dynamic layers to fix that. The screen is now showing the map link that produced the map I just displayed. The address for where the data is hosted on the GIS server is highlighted, and this map displays layer number 0. So I'm going to copy the address for the data and display the server's table of contents. Now the screen is displaying a page from the table of contents of the ArcGIS server. Notice that this is MapServer data. Feature server and image server data do not support dynamic layers at all. And only some MapServer data supports dynamic layers. Scrolling down, I see these two lines here indicate that dynamic layers are supported. We can also check for dynamic layer support by scrolling further down and looking at this line here, supports dynamic layers is true. So keep in mind when you want to know whether certain MapServer data supports dynamic layers, the way to find out is by looking at the ArcGIS server's table of contents like we're doing now. You have to be on a layers page in order to find out if dynamic layers are supported or not. Underneath this layers heading is one or more layers, and the layer name is a link that leads to some useful information, including the default styling the server applies when it sends the data from that layer to the map. So I'm going to click the layer name and we'll look at what that default styling looks like by scrolling down here, scrolling down to the section titled Drawing Info. These items here under symbol determine the way the data appears on the map using the default styles. And using dynamic layers, you can change any of this. The first setting has two parts. This part here, the SLS, the L there stands for line. The solid is a keyword, and there are different keywords that can be used right there in order to maybe show a dotted line, a dashed line, or some combination. So to see what the allowed keywords are, I'm going to copy that right there, and I'm going to do a Google search on that text, ESRISLS, and I'm going to follow the first hit that pops up and scroll down just a bit here, and there's the word style, and here are the allowed values for style. So there's solid right there. If you want a solid line, you would use solid. If you wanted a dashed line, well then you could use the word dash, and so on. The screen is now showing what you will almost always see for the first part of the style setting. There are three different things you typically will see for the first part of style. If you're dealing with points, it'll be SMS, M standing for marker. If you're dealing with lines, you'll see SLS, L standing for line, of course. And if you're dealing with polygons, then you'll see the letter F referring to fill. And you can always do a Google search on that text right there to see what the allowed keywords are for any of these styles. Going back to the server's table of contents page, here's the word solid again. If we wanted a dotted line or a dashed line or some combination, that is the keyword that we would change. Looking at the setting for color, the first three values here stand for red, green, and blue, otherwise known as RGB. You can easily learn more by doing a Google search on RGB color. When these three values are 0, like we see here, that defines the color black. I leave the fourth value at 255. If you change that to something lower, all that does is mute the color, and I don't really see any reason to do that. The width setting does not have to be an even number. You can use 1.2, 1.5, whatever you want there. If you would like to learn more about the helpful information you can find by looking at an ArcGIS server's table of contents, then that topic was covered by an earlier video in this series. Now let's restyle this trail data. The screen now shows two versions of the GISsurfer map link to display the trail data. The only difference is the second link includes dynamic layers. There's the syntax right there. When you use dynamic layers, that becomes part of the specification for a single data layer. The layer number must appear 3 times. We see that here, there, and there. If you want to change to a dotted or dashed or some other style of line, there's the word solid that you would change. Here is the color, and 000, recall, is a black line, and the width is set to 1. What you see in this dynamic layers is that I use the exact same default style that's defined on the server. Now let's change to a different style. The screen now shows a map link to display the trail data, and I've broken the link into 2 parts. When I copy and paste in dynamic layer syntax, the next thing I do is I make sure that the 2 layer numbers right there and right there are the same as the layer number that I'm going to restyle. The content for the dynamic layer specification is inside of these square brackets, one right there and one right there. Now the next thing to consider changing is whether I want to have a solid line or some other style of line, dot or dash. Typically I just use, for lines, I just have a solid line. I often will change the color, and here I have changed the color. I've changed red, green. This will result in a bright green color on the map, and the trails will be wider because I'm using a width of 3. I also changed the name of the overlay, USFS Trails Green, and because I want this overlay to be displayed when the map opens, I added the same name to the overlay parameter. I'm going to reassemble this part of the link and display the map. Copy that. Now the trails are easy to see on the dark aerial. But if I change the base map to that one right there, then, well, the map is still okay, but the trails do not stand out as much as they might, since both the trails and the base map are shades of green. The map can be improved by displaying the same trail data as a narrow black line on top of the wide green line. So let's do that. This overlay right here displays the same trail data using the default styling defined on the server, which you recall is a narrow black line. Exactly what we want. Now I used a different name here because each overlay has to have a unique name, and because I want the narrow black line overlay to be on when the map opens, I added that name to the overlay parameter right there. And because I want the black line to be on top of the green line, I turn the green line on first before turning the black line on. overlays are turned on in the order they appear in the overlay parameter. I'm going to reassemble this link now and open the map, but before I do so, notice these two vertical lines right there. Anytime you're passing multiple overlays into the data parameter or multiple commands into the data parameter, at the end of each one you have to have two vertical lines like that. Think of that as an end of line indicator or return on your keyboard. That key is an uppercase key on the right hand side of my keyboard. Now to reassemble the link and copy and open the map. You can see by using this technique of displaying the same data twice, the trails are easy to see on any base map. I could go over to the one with the light background by combining the wide green line and narrow black line. The trails just leap off the page there. I could go down and look at that map, the same thing. Now, did you notice the trail labels on this map here? In fact, if we went over to the all-white base map, they'd be a lot easier to see. You can actually read them now. I will often turn labels off, and I'm going to show you how to use dynamic layers to do that. The screen is now showing the current map link, but the two overlays are separated out a little bit. Here is the syntax for turning off labels in the first overlay. And note the comma. In the second overlay, I had to use dynamic layers to turn labels off, but the dynamic layer specification is not restyling the data. So the syntax is just slightly different because there is no comma, as we saw in the first overlay. Now I can reassemble this link, copy the link, and open the map. Here is the reassembled link that I'm going to copy and use to open the map. And the labels are now gone. Can't see them here, here. If we went to the all-white base map, look at that one, labels are gone. Now I'm going to show you a second example of what you can do with line data and dynamic layers. The screen is showing a map link that will display certain roads in national forests. The roads will be displayed using the default styling defined on the ArcGIS server. I'm going to copy this link and open this map. And now we see the map and we see the road right here, and notice that labels are displayed on the roads. A little better look at that if we go to the all-white base map. Okay, there's roads, labels, etc. So the map is displaying the default styling defined on the server. Let's go back to the map link here. The address for the data on the server is right there. Let's open up that table of contents page and note that we're displaying layer 0. Okay, here's the table of contents page. We can see that this is MapServer information. Let's see if dynamic layers are supported. Yes, we see these two lines there indicating dynamic layers are supported. And we can also look lower down to look at this line right here, and dynamic layers are true. The top of the screen now shows the map link I made that has two overlays to show trails with the wide green line and the narrow black line. I added an underline right there to the overlay parameter to remind myself that I'm going to have to add a couple overlay names right there, because I'm going to add two additional overlays to this map to restyle the road information. And in between each of the two overlays I'm going to add, I'm going to have two vertical lines like that again. So scrolling down a little bit, here's the first overlay to restyle the road data that I'm going to add. And remember that when you're doing dynamic layers, the same layer number has to appear 3 times, there, there, and there. I invented a name for this overlay, going to call it Road Open Black. And I'm using the style of solid. This overlay is going to be black, and it's going to have a width of 4. And I'm also going to turn labels off with that syntax right there. Then I'm going to have 2 vertical lines again. And here's the second overlay that I'm going to add to restyle roads. I invented the name with white right there because each overlay has to have a unique name. I've got the same 3 layer numbers in there again. a solid line. This line is going to be white. That's what the 255 numbers do. If red, green, and blue are all set to the maximum, 255, your line will be white. And this is going to be a narrower white line with a width of 1.5. So I can now combine this long link and open the map. But before I open the map, I wanted to use the combined link and point out a couple things. First, I added the names of the two additional road overlays to the overlay parameter, and I was careful to have the wide black line open before the narrower white line. And the second thing I wanted to show you is just simply how long the link is now. And there's a way to fix that too. Instead of making really long links like this, a much better plan is to put the content for the data parameter, and that is everything after data equals right there. All of this is content for the data parameter. Put that into a text file online and then make a map link with the data parameter pointing to the address for that text file. Good news, Google Drive will host your text file for free. A later video in this series will show you step by step how to do that. Oh, and as I reassembled the link, I'm always careful to check and make sure that no spaces have sneaked into the map link. Okay, now I'm ready to copy the link and open the map. And now the road looks like that, with a narrower white line on top of a wider black line. Personally, I like that style for small forest roads. Now, you do see a label right there, but it turns out that label is in the base map, which we can see if we go over to the all white base map. There's actually no label on the road data because I turned that off. Now, here's an important caution. Keep in mind that just because you see some GIS data on a map like these trails or roads we're looking at, the reality on the ground might be very different. Roads get washed out, trails get relocated, and the GIS data does not always get updated. So when you go out to hike, ski, bike, whatever you do, remember to bring along your common sense. Next, I'm going to show you how to restyle polygons using dynamic layers. The map link on the screen will display forecast zones for the National Weather Service. I'm going to open up this map. The map on the screen shows a bunch of polygons. Each one has solid fill and a border or outline. Now, I don't see any reason to have fill on a map like this at all. So instead of using an opacity setting to make the fill semi-transparent, I'm going to use dynamic layers to turn the fill off. Before I do that though, I'm going to show you why I picked this layer to display. I'm going to zoom in over here and click on the map to see the attribute data for the forecast zone that I clicked. Scroll down a little bit, and here's a link that I can follow, and this link will display the detailed forecast discussion for the zone that I clicked. And I think this is the absolute most detailed information about weather that a person can get. I often look at this first thing in the morning. There's a major update, typically quite early in the day, and then maybe one or two smaller updates as the day goes on. I put the map link back on the screen. Notice that this is layer 1 that we're displaying, and here's the address for where the data is on the server, and I'm going to open up that table of contents page and we'll look at the default styling for the polygons. Okay, I'm on a table of contents page now. We see that this is MapServer information. Scrolling down, there's a lot of metadata here. Noah does a really good job. Scrolling down, we see yes, dynamic layers are supported by those two lines right there, and can always also scroll further down. Look for that line. I'd like to check that. That's true. Okay, so we can play with dynamic layers, and since our map is displaying layer number 1, I can click on the layer name right there and then see how the server has styled the data by scrolling down on that page until I get to the drawing info. The first lines right here, these two lines, are the default style for the polygon fill. It's going to have solid fill, and there's a color defined there as well. The outline is the border around the polygon. It is defined with these three lines. There's going to be a solid border. It's going to be red. The width is going to be 2. The outline around a polygon is exactly the same syntax as the trail data we earlier looked at in this video. Notice that the outline is SLS, L for line. The fill for the polygon is SFS, F standing for fill. Now the polygon fill does not have to be solid. There are some other keywords you could use there instead. So to see what those keywords are, do a Google search on that right there. Paste that in there. There's our Google search, and I'm going to follow the first hit by clicking on that. Scroll down just a little bit. Here's the word style, and here are the different keywords that you can use to have something other than a solid fill. You could have some diagonals, you could have a vertical, you could have a horizontal, so on and so forth. Most of the polygon data I have seen uses a solid fill, but I've used diagonals myself a little bit on some maps that I've made. Going back to the server's table of contents page, color for the fill works exactly the same as color for lines. If you wanted to turn fill off altogether, you could set the last value there to 0. When I do that, I like to set all 4 values to 0 if I'm going to turn fill off. Now it's time to restyle this data. Here's a map link where the first part just displays the map with the default style, and I'm going to add dynamic layers to restyle that. When you're working with polygon data, there's a bit more syntax because you have 2 things. You have fill and you have an outline. So the part that pertains to the fill is that part right there where you have your keyword and a color. The part that pertains to the outline is that part right there where you have your style, your color, and your width. I have turned the fill completely off by setting all 4 of those values to 0. And I'm going to use a dashed line this time, just for fun. That line's going to be a dash, and the line is going to be solid blue with a width of 1.5, and the labels are going to be turned off. So let's reassemble this link and open the map. Oh, wait, a reminder. Before I open the map, remember when you're working with dynamic layers, the layer number you see there has to appear 2 more times, once there and once there. It's an easy mistake to make to forget to have the layer number appear 3 times. Now to the map. And sure enough, when the map opens, we see no fill, we see blue lines, and we see dashes. Where the line runs straight, sometimes the dashes aren't all that apparent. Next, I'm going to show you another example of restyling polygon data using dynamic layers. The screen is showing a map link that displays wilderness areas managed by the Bureau of Land Management, BLM. It is layer number 0. Let's take a look at this map. Okay, here's the map, and we see the data is styled with solid fill. Well, we can improve that, of course. So I'm going to go back to the link I just opened, and let's take a look at how the server is styling the data by going to the table of contents page like we've done before. Paste that into my browser right there. And here's the map server page. Scrolling down just to take a look, we know that it supports dynamic layers. Could scroll down a little bit more. I always like to check, and it says here dynamic layers is true. Okay, great. So we know we can play with dynamic layers, and the map displayed layer 0, so we'll click on the layer name to go to the next page in the table of contents, scroll down to the drawing info. Here we are, and now we can see how the polygon is styled with solid fill, and the red 38, the green 87 give a dark green color like we saw on the map. And we see that the style here is turn the outline off by setting the last value in the color to 0 and also setting the width to 0. Either one alone would have turned the outline off, but I like to put them all to 0, and they've done that here as well. The screen is now changed to a map link I made to improve the map. First, I made the solid fill semi-transparent with an opacity setting. Opacity does not have anything to do with dynamic layers. In other words, you can use an opacity setting with any GIS data that is displayed on the map. Second, I'm going to display the same data a second time with dynamic layers. But this time I'm going to turn the fill off by setting all 4 values to 0 right there. And I'm also going to use the same dark green color, 3887, that the server used for the fill. I'm going to use that color for an outline, which will be 1.5 wide. And remember, because this map is going to have 2 overlays, they're separated with the 2 vertical lines that you've seen before in this video. And note again, in the syntax that pertains to the fill, you see SFS, and in the syntax that pertains to the outline, the line around the polygon, you see SLS for line. Now I'm going to reassemble this link and display the map. Now the wilderness areas appear semi-transparent. You can see through them, and they have a nice dark green outline around them. And they'll display well on any map that you look at here. Next, I'm going to show an example of restyling point data. This kind of data displays on the map with a symbol at each point. The screen is showing a map link that displays gauges along the coast that collect information on things like tides and weather. The map will display layer number 0. I'm going to open up the map here. Okay, we see a map that has green circles on it, and if you look close, you'll see a narrow black outline around each circle. Let's go back to the link and get the address for the data from the server and look at the table of contents page. Once again, we see that we're looking at MapServer information. Scrolling down, we see that dynamic layers are supported. Always, sometimes I'll just look for that line right there. Dynamic layers are true. And our map displayed layer number 0. So to look at how the server styles the data, we'll click on the name of layer number 0 right there and scroll down like we've been doing to the drawing info right there. For point data style, we see Esri SMS. M stands for marker. Just like I've been doing, I can copy that, go to a browser tab, do a Google search on that to see what the other allowed keywords are, and follow the first hit right there. Scroll down on that page to style right here, and we see some of the keywords we can use are circle, like the server does that we're looking at, or it could be a cross, a diamond, and a couple other things. So when you want to find out the allowed keywords are, that's how you do that. Going back to the server table of contents page, right there, the color setting here is fill inside of the symbol. And here's the overall size. And the color setting and width we see down here, well, that pertains to an outline around the symbol if you want to have one or not. And here the outline color is black, 3 zeros, and there is an outline, a narrow one, with a width of 1. The screen is now showing the link I'm going to use to restyle that data. Again, I have the layer number appearing 3 times, once there, once here, once there. This is Esri SMS for marker. I'm going to use the keyword of a cross. So instead of a circle, the markers will be a cross. The fill inside of the cross symbol is going to be red. This is red, green, blue. This is all red right there. It's going to have a size of 8. For an outline around each cross, I have turned the outline off by setting the last value here to 0, but I set the width to 0 as well because that's just how I like to do it. So I'm ready now to reassemble the link. We don't need any two vertical lines here because all of this information is the same overlay. We're just adding dynamic layers to the single overlay the map displays. So I can reassemble my link like that, copy and open the map. Now the symbols are red cross, just like we wanted. And I'm going to click one of these markers, take a quick look at what the attribute data is. That pops up on the screen. Scroll down a little bit. I see a link that leads to more information. Click that. And so here's a chart showing what tides are doing at that marker. And another useful thing is clicking up there and we get a nice display about what the winds are doing at that gauge. And there's some other information here as well if you live around the coast. I have one final example to share to help you use dynamic layers. The screen is displaying a map link that will show state lines using the default styling defined on the ArcGIS server. Note that there are two layer numbers. One layer has detailed data and displays when the map is zoomed in. The other layer has more generalized data and displays when the map is zoomed out. Let's take a look at the map. The state lines display with dashes and there's no fill. Now going back to the map link, let's go to the server's table of contents page and see how the data is styled there. And keep in mind we're looking at layers 21 and 22. So copy that and open the table of contents up. And MapServer and dynamic layers, just like we've been doing. Dynamic layers down here as well. Supports dynamic layers is true. Okay, and we were displayed layer 21 and 22, so I'm going to click on layer 21 and scroll down to the drawing info and take a look at that. We see that the fill is turned off because the last value for color is 0, and the outline uses a keyword of dash, and there's a color and there's a width value of 1. Now the screen is displaying the text that I'm going to use to restyle the data on the map. Now because there are two layers in one overlay, the syntax is a little bit different. So in dynamic layers, this syntax in here, in between the red brackets, is going to restyle layer number 21, and then there's a comma, and this syntax in between those red brackets is going to restyle layer number 22. We're only restyling the outline around the polygon. The server is already set to have no fill. We like that, so we don't need to restyle the fill. If we were going to restyle the fill, we would do that for layer 21 right there. I'm going to delete that overline. If we were going to restyle the fill, we do that for layer 22 right there. I'm going to delete that as well because we don't need it. We're going to have a solid line for the state boundaries. That line is going to be blue. Remember, this is red, green, and blue. 255 is the best blue we can do. It's going to be 2.5 wide, and we're using that same setting of blue and 2.5 wide for both layers. So we can reassemble this map, and we see what we expected with a solid blue line. If you would like to see more examples of syntax for using dynamic layers, then just look at any GISsurfer map, like this one, click on Menu, and then over here there are 3 different choices you can click on that will lead to maps that I have produced. So I'm going to click on Parcel, and I'm going to scroll down. Maps that I produce and post on this site use a text file where all the overlays are defined. So you can copy the link for any of those text files, copy, and open that text file in your browser, paste it right there, open that up, and scroll down here and you will see lots of examples for dynamic layers that you can look at. You can copy any of this syntax, use it in your own maps, change it, whatever you want. This is the end of the video showing you how to use dynamic layers to restyle some, but not all, ArcGIS MapServer data. If there's any other general purpose web map out there that also provides access to dynamic layers and shows you how to use that feature, then I would enjoy hearing about it. Next in this series is video number 9, which will show you how to use Google Drive to host text files and GPX files for free. Text files are extremely useful when you are making GISsurfer map links that display multiple layers of GIS data. In addition to this video, there is also a PDF file titled Advanced ArcGIS Tips that has detailed examples showing how to use dynamic layers. Don't let the title of that PDF scare you off. Using dynamic layers mostly is just copying and pasting, and of course, you already know how to do that. You can find that PDF file as well as others by going to the GISsurfer homepage, GISsurfer.com, click the big green menu button, and go to the Help page. You can always find my contact information and links to my various projects by visiting the Mapping Support Project page, mappingsupport.com. Thanks for watching. I hope you find GISsurfer to be useful.